All right, this is part 2 of notes 11.5, factoring polynomials day 2, starting with number 4. So number 4 already has our greatest common factor of 3, but let's go ahead and go through how we found that. So if we want to be really fancy on the calculator, we're going to do that double greatest common denominator slash factor. So that goes math, number, 9, math, or arrow over to number, 9, because I need 2 of them. And then I'm going to put in 9, comma, 66 for A and B, parentheses, because I've got to close it off. It can only do 2. So then now I have this factor and another one, so comma, 21, end it off, and now we cheat the system and we get that 3. So that means that I have to take and divide everything by 3 and instead put it outside of the parentheses. So when I divide everything by 3, 3c squared divided by 3 gives me 3c squared, and then 66c divided by 3 gives me 22c, and then 21 divided by 3 gives me 7. Okay, so now I can go about getting my product and my sum. So my product, again, is A times C, which I want to put inside my box. So I got my box. And I put that inside, so 3c squared times positive 7 gives me 21c squared, so that's my product. And then my sum is the B value, so 22c, so that's going to be my 2 numbers that go in there, the ones that add up to be 22c. Alright, so then I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to be 21c squared, but add to be 22. So I'm going to go use my calculator and say product is 21 divided by x, and then I want to get that sum, so 21 divided by x plus x. Go to our table, and I'm looking for 22. Oop, there it is in that column. So 1 and 21. So that means 1c times 21c adds multiplies to be 21, but 1c plus 21c adds up to be 22. So I have positive 1c and positive 21c to put in there. I want to pull out my factors for those. So I'm looking at 3 and 21, and if I'm like, man, I don't know what that is, remember that you can use that greatest common factor. So math, number, 9, and then I can do 3 and 21 and get that my greatest common factor is 3. And then they both have a c, so it's 3c. And then I look about that, and okay, 3c times c gives me c squared, so both of those, that whole row needs a c. And then we've got 21, so I have 3c times, 21 divided by 3 is 7, so 3c times 7, so I'm going to keep that 7 all the way across. And I'm looking for that last bit of that factor, so I say what times c? 1 times c gives me 1c, and 1 times 7 gives me 7, so this is plus 1. I'm not going to forget my greatest common factor, which means my final answer is 3 times 3c plus 1 times c plus 7 for my final answer. Number 5 has us where we're going to need our greatest common factor first. So I'm looking to see what's the same between these, so I can use my calculator again, but look here, we already got a 3 and a 3, so I really only have 2 numbers here. So I'm going to use that greatest common factor and see the greatest common factor between 3 and 18, which gives me 3. But the other thing I notice is x to the 3rd power, x to the 2nd power, and x. So since they all have an x, that means I can take out an x for each one, as well as the 3 for each one. So my whole greatest common factor is 3x. So I want to divide everything by 3x and keep that out front of my factors. So this is one where we got to think back to our exponent rules as well. So if I look at my numbers, 3 over 3 cancels, so that's just a 1x, but then I have x to the third power, x to the first power. So 3 minus 1 would give me x squared. And then I have the minus, 3 over 3 cancels, x squared divided by x to the first power, so that's 2 minus 1 is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 1 out front there to help me with my sum later on. Keep the minus, and then 18x over, x over x cancels, and then, because that's 1 minus 1, which is 0, and so it goes away completely. And then 18 divided by 3 is 6. So now I draw my box. And I want to go about finding my product, which means I use A and C multiplied together. So I like using the 1. So I have 1x squared times negative 6 gives me negative 6x squared. And then my sum is my middle number. So negative 1x is going to be the two numbers that add up to be inside. So I go back to my calculator and I make this negative 6 divided by x and negative 6 divided by x plus x. I want that third column, my sum, to be negative 1. So I go to my table. There it is, negative 1. So my two factors are positive 2 and negative 3 because positive 2x times negative 3x gives me negative 6x squared, and positive 2x plus negative 3x would give me a negative 1x. So then positive 2x and negative 3x are what goes into my boxes. So we go for my factors. And I'm looking at that first column. The numbers, there's nothing in common, but they both have an x. So then I pull that x out. And then I have 1x squared times x squared, so x times x gives me x squared, so then both of these have an x. And then we know that we have x, and that means I need negative 3 times x to give me negative 3x, which means this one has a negative 3, and that one has a negative 3. So I'm looking for my last column. Blank times x gives me 2x. That's a 2, and then I want to check to make sure that also works below. 2 times negative 3 gives me negative 6. Great. So then that's 2. So I'm not going to forget my GCF, and that's going to be 3x times x plus 2 times x minus 3 as my final answer. All right, last one. We're going to do my GPS. So we're starting with my greatest common factor. So if I look at the numbers, 1, 3, 70, well, if there's a 1, then I know that I'm not going to have anything but a 1 for my GCF. I don't have x's all the way across, but I do have a y all the way across. So I do have a factor of y, which means I want to divide out that y to get to my product and my sum. All that's going to do is cancel it out for each one. So then I'll have y, and then I'll have x squared plus 3x minus 70. Go for my product, which means I need my box. And my product are my a and my c. So that's x squared times negative 70, which gives me negative 70x squared. And then my sum is my b value, so 3x, positive 3x. I go back to my calculator, and I want negative 70, I'm going to have to write the whole thing, divided by x and negative 70 divided by x plus x. Go to my table, and I'm looking for it to be 3 in that column. Ooh, these are all negative, which means I'm going to go up. Ooh, there it is. There's a positive 3, which means my two factors are negative 7, positive 10, because negative 7x times positive 10x would give me negative 70, but negative 7x plus 10x would give me a positive 3. So those are my two factors. Negative 7x, positive 10x inside my box. So now I go for my parentheses factors, and look what they have in common. So again, finding those greatest common factors. X squared and 10x means that they only have an x in common. So I pull that x out. And then x times x gives me x squared. So I'm going to pull that x all the way across. Go to my bottom row. X times 10 gives me 10x. Pull that 10 all the way across. And then I look over my side. Blank times x gives me negative 7x. So that's negative 7 times x. And then when I check the bottom, negative 7 times 10 gives me negative 70. So negative 7 is the last part of my parentheses. Don't forget about your GCF when we're writing down the answer. So that's y times x minus 7 times x plus 10 to get your final answer. Okay, so I want you to notice on here, we followed the same stuff every single time. We did the black part, finding our GCF, and then did the red to get my product, so using that inside the box, multiplying those two numbers to get my product. My sum came from that middle number. We used the calculator to find our two factors that go inside that diagonal. And then we found the factors of what multiplies to bring those out into the parentheses. And then we use our GCF and those two factors to get my final answer. I hope that helps, and I'll see y'all next time.